Hello everyone and welcome to our first session on ReactJS components. Introduction to React components. React's component-based architecture is what sets it apart from many other JavaScript libraries and frameworks. Components allow developers to break down complex UIs into smaller, reusable and manageable pieces. Now, what is a component? A component in React is a self-contained module that renders some output. It can be as simple as a button or as complex as a form with multiple fields. Components can maintain their own state and lifecycle, making them highly versatile and reusable. Types of components. There are two main types of components in React. Functional components. These are plain JavaScript functions that return JSX. They are stateless and do not have lifecycle methods. With the introduction of React hooks, functional components can now manage state and side effects. Class components. These are ES6 classes that extend from React.Component. They can manage state and lifecycle methods, making them suitable for more complex logic. React components are the building blocks of any React application. They allow you to split the UI into independent, reusable pieces that can be managed separately. Components make your code more modular, maintainable, and easier to understand. Types of components. Host. There are two main types of components in React: functional components and class components. Let's start by creating a functional component. Open your SRC folder and create a new file named greeting.js. In this example, we define a functional component called greeting that takes props as an argument and returns a div containing a greeting message. The name prop is used to personalize the message. Now, let's use this greeting component in our app component. Open src bar app.js and modify it as follows. We have imported the greeting component and used it within the app component, passing the name prop to it. Save the file and check your browser. You should see a personalized greeting message. Next, let's create a class component. Create a new file named welcome.js in the src folder. In this example, we define a class component named welcome that extends React.Component. The render method returns the JSX to be rendered. The props are accessed using this.props. Now, let's use the welcome component in our app component. Modify src bar app.js as follows. We have imported the welcome component and used it within the app component, passing the name prop to it. Save the file and check your browser. You should see both the greeting and welcome messages displayed. One of the strengths of React is its ability to compose components. You can build complex UIs by combining simple components. In this app component, we compose 3 welcome components with different props. Introduction to the component lifecycle. Every React component goes through a series of phases during its existence. These phases are collectively known as the component lifecycle. The lifecycle is divided into 3 main phases. Mounting, when a component is being inserted into the DOM. Updating, when a component is being re-rendered due to changes in its props or state. Unmounting, when a component is being removed from the DOM. React provides specific lifecycle methods that allow you to run code at each of these phases. Mounting phase. The mounting phase is when a component is created and inserted into the DOM. There are 4 main lifecycle methods involved in this phase. Constructor or props. This method is called before the component is mounted. It is used to initialize the component state and bind event handlers. Static get derived state from props or props state. This method is rarely used. It is invoked right before calling the render method, both on the initial mount and on subsequent updates. It should return an object to update the state or null to update nothing. This is the only required method in a class component. It examines the component's props and states and returns one of the following types: React elements, arrays, fragments, portals, strings and numbers, booleans or null. Component did mount function. This method is called immediately after a component is mounted. It is a good place to initiate network requests or set up subscriptions. Updating phase. The updating phase occurs when a component state or props change. The following methods are called during this phase: static get derived state from props or props state. As mentioned earlier, this method is also called during the updating phase, allowing state updates based on props changes. Should component update or next props next state. This method lets React know if a component's output is not affected by the current change in state or props. By default, it returns true. If it returns false, the component will not re-render. Render function. This method is called to determine what the UI should look like. It is called after should component update and before component did update. Get snapshot before update or priv props priv states. This method is called right before the DOM is updated. Any value returned by this method will be passed as a parameter to component did update. Component did update or priv props priv states snapshot. This method is called immediately after updating occurs. It is a good place to do network requests as long as you compare the current props to previous props. Unmounting phase. The unmounting phase is when a component is removed from the DOM. There is one lifecycle method in this phase. Component will unmount function. This method is called immediately before a component is unmounted and destroyed. It is used to clean up resources such as network requests, timers, or subscriptions. Error handling phase. React also provides lifecycle methods to handle errors that occur during rendering in lifecycle methods and in constructors of the whole tree. Static get derived state from error function. This method is invoked after an error has been thrown by a descendant component. It received the error that was thrown as a parameter and should return a value to update state. Component did catch error info function. This method is called after an error has been thrown by a descendant component. It receives two parameters, the error and an info object with a component stack property. Practical application. Understanding these lifecycle methods enables you to manage side effects, optimize performance, and handle errors effectively. For example, use component did mount for data fetching, use should component update to optimize rendering, use component did catch for error handling and logging. Lifecycle methods are special methods in class components that allow you to run code at particular times in the component's lifecycle, such as when it mounts, updates, or unmounts. Now let's look at how to use the component's lifecycle. In this timer example, component.mount starts a timer when the component is first added to the DOM, and component will unmount clears the timer when the component is removed. React components are the cornerstone of building modern web applications. Their modularity, reusability, and ability to manage state and lifecycle events make them powerful tools for developers. By mastering components, you can create dynamic, efficient, and maintainable user interfaces. That's all for this session. Thank you.